Alrighty, guys, I have got two more sessions to catch up on. The first was another one-on-one session with Bremril, figuring out what he has been doing with the Roadhounds. And this one definitely felt a lot more stiff, a lot more stilted, just less fun overall, a lot less smooth of a session than the first one-on-one session we had. Which I think there's a couple of things that could be chalked up to. Uh, for one, there's a lot less intoxicants flowing through the system this time, which I do think there's something to be said for. I do think the role play does come more naturally when you got a little bit of alcohol in you. But I don't think that's really what the problem was. I think the main lesson I learned from this session is know your audience, know what they're into, and run your session or plan your session accordingly. The first session was a very, I would call it like a bog standard. You're given a quest, you know exactly what you are like ordered to do. Like the hook is obvious, and there's just like set out encounters that you deal with. You get a reward by the end of it, and then you're good to go. This one, I tried mixing in that intrigue this time. So he's been introduced to the like main head honcho of the Roadhounds, Bastien Leloup, and his second in command, Elena, and both of their visions for the Roadhounds, what their sort of motives are and what they want to pursue. And I also introduced the genus loci that of the woods, the local gods, the Malfabok that the Roadhounds worship, and their rival Baphomet is the uh, god that the Roadhounds worship, and Malfabok is the rival god. And I could tell there was not like I was trying to introduce the idea that this could be something to play off of, is like either siding with one side and maybe using them against the other, something to play with there. Uh, but I started getting the sense that that wasn't really what was motivating the like players' actions. And so there was like a bit of a like an intended quest this time. They found out about a caravan of Stonebeard goods, particularly silver, being sent to the Duke in an effort to stop these werewolf attacks that were happening in his duchy. And that went down pretty well, pretty standard combat encounter. And then they found a letter that indicated like an inventory manifest detailing a large store of gems being held in a nearby Stonebeard trading post. And they like gave that information back to their Roadhound friends, and they set up like a raid and attacked the trading post. And then for real life circumstances getting in the way, we had to stop in the middle of that encounter. So I'm going to say that like the Stonebeards were able to repel the attack and prevent uh for getting their gems stolen. Um so overall, I think if I do any more one-on-one sessions, I will certainly take into account who I'm doing that session with and what kind of play style they prefer, and make an appropriate session, an adventure for that. Yeah, so like a little awkward, but I do think it'll pay off by making things better in the future. And this next session got kind of messy. Now, the players still had fun with it, and for that, I suppose I would call it a successful session. I will say, just right off the bat, not a great start, in that the like main adventure I had prepared was going to be following the like how their like plan, their scheme to talk to this pit fiend was going to go down. Mm. And their blackmailing of him with the wish card. Uh, but the player that had that wish card wasn't able to make it, which I had like this secondary sort of plan of the party following up on Cleetus Gilmore's sort of adventure and reclaiming his hold. So they all start off. They wake up in the Chateau de Foix with the Duke Reacus, and they are given 10 men at arms from the Duke. Something else I should start off with before this. So I have given control of the corpse weaver to my brother, which I was a great idea. I think he did an excellent job. In this first week alone, he had a total of 20 schemes that he had given me, and they were all great. Every single one of them could have been their own entire session. So I'm really, really happy with how that turned out. Um, but as for this session, so they got these 10 men at arms. They left, went out on the road. They reach the town of Borzu, or well, they start heading on the road to the town of Borzu, where they see Father Guimau running away from a giant horde of zombies. And basically, it comes to the player's attentions that the town of Borzu is attacked and has been razed. And now there's like this sort of, I guess, like advice in the DM stratosphere that suggests that if you don't want to kill your players, you use their like NPCs as hostages, because if you don't want to make the set the stakes at like you guys are all going to die and like remove the character from the story entirely, you can like put things at stake that they care about, uh that they'll either want to like go out of their way to protect. So I think here I might have made the mistake of thinking that they cared more about the people in the town of Borzu than they actually had any real reason to, which fair enough. That's on me. I guess I didn't really give any of them a real reason to actually care about any of the people in the town. Like there wasn't any sense of urgency or anything to try to rescue any possible survivors that still might be inside the town or anything like that. They kind of just hit it with the it is what it is, and just generally stayed away from the town for the rest of the session, which fair enough. I guess avoid the zombies. Um, I guess that does teach me a little bit of a lesson about put make sure you're putting things at stake that the players actually care about. Otherwise, the tension is not there. But I do think this was a good lesson in learning the kinds of things that the players do care about. So they do get to the hills, and yeah, after this zombie attack, when they rescue Father Guimo, bring him back to our core city, leave him and the men at arms back at the city, and go off to the hold. Just the four of them. Right, today we had Humdu, Cleetus, Adrian, and Hillgar as our party. So they get to the hills. They decide to go through a cave network that Cleetus was aware of because of his father's stories that he told of this hold. And in this cave network, they come across some kobolds, and these kobolds are fighting each other, and they relatively diplomatically resolve this situation by stopping this fight between the kobolds. They decide to side with the sort of kobold clan that worships a Zorn in this cave network. And they make a deal with this Zorn. They feed him gold, and he creates a tunnel. He burrows a tunnel into the supply room of the dwarves, into this ancestral home of Clan Gilmore Khazar Lerdnaz. Inside, they then go into some workshops where they see a bunch of goblin slaves working on armor for the trolls, and they kill this like goblin slave master that's like whipping them up and forcing them to continue smithing and working. And they have like a bunch of goblins now that are freed that they all let go free back into the cave system. So I'm sure that'll come up somewhat later that there's a group of goblins that to some extent owe their lives, their freedom to these adventurers that had just saved them. And so then they get into like the hold proper, and they start having to formulate a plan of how they want to deal with the trolls. And this here is uh well like something I think finally, at least in hindsight, I think something switched in that uh like this session I think is going to be like a keystone marker in the beginning of my Captain Ahab, uh Picard, if you will, fighting against the Borg. The line must be drawn here moment. And there's a famous meme that goes around in the D&D community of like how the session starts or how the campaign starts, and it's the Fellowship of the Ring marching across the mountains, and then it's like the party by the end of the campaign, and they are all it's like the Monty Python Quest for the Holy Grail like movie scene. And uh like this was the tipping point when that had finally occurred, when there was a like 15-minute diatribe that the players started going on about the uh like the very detailed, brutal and vicious rape fantasy that they wanted to like enact against these trolls. um and I like I realized that the game I had envisioned as the DM, how I envisioned this campaign of this heroes like barely scraping by the skin of their teeth, using their wit and cleverness, and just in this truly awful and vicious world, and looking now to see what it has become, like objectively, which is a cartoon and a platform to go on 15-minute stand up improv routines about your the like brutal rape of trolls and how exactly you would do it and what exactly it would look like and the feelings everyone would have about it and the that is when like I've come to sort of realize like okay, so we're playing a different game here as a DM than my players are. I've realized at this moment that well, okay, well, people very much so act on incentives, you know? So if you reward them for certain behavior, they are going to continue indulging in that behavior. And uh, I've realized that just the generosity has been far too high. The heat has been just set to low for way too long, and this is going to be the beginning of my villain DM arc. I can feel it coming. Like the I guess you know if in my metaphor I'm Captain Ahab, then my white whale is troll rape. Uh, and I think I'm gonna overcompensate by just taking the heat and having it on this bare simmer slow cooker low and just crank it up to max heat, which I know is not how you're supposed to cook. And I know it's probably going to bite me in the butt in the future. But I think I just gotta accept, you gotta just say, uh, you'd rather die standing than living on your knees. And, like, if everything falls apart after this, then so be it. It is better than this devolving into the troll rape campaign. I'd rather the campaign just not exist at all if that's the alternative. And uh, well, I guess there might be the argument of like, well, like you just said earlier, know your audience and play to your audience. If your players want the troll rape joke fantasy campaign, then like give them that, you know? And I guess my response is, well, when I was considering what I wanted my campaign to be, I still wanted to weigh the choices between two different ways of playing D&D, as in either like do my players want the intrigue, talking politics, trying to convince NPCs of acting in their best interest, or do my players want a good old dungeon crawl where they walk across tiles and flank monsters and kill them and take treasure? I was not trying to weigh my options between troll rape stand up uh improv versus playing the game of D&D at all. Uh so yeah, I can feel the Captain Picard. The line must be drawn here, no further. Uh, like things have got to change. I can feel this is a maybe 10 sessions down the line in the future. I might have a like a redemption arc where I'm like, oh yeah, I've just been too hard on everyone, and I can see now the purpose of the occasional levity and jokey fun stuff. uh but yeah, there has been too much of that, and I blame myself because it is I really see it as a crutch because it's turning stuff into jokes is really easy. Like anything can be turned into jokes, and it's not hard. But doing stuff with any sort of emotion behind it, that's really the hard part. And there has been enough uh, comedic relief throughout this entire campaign to make up for the next 20 sessions worth of content if there's not a single other comedic element that occurs. And, you know, I just find it somewhat unfair to some of the more serious elements of the campaign that could conceivably be explored. That I think right now, if I let the campaign go down the path it is going towards, then that they will all just become goofs and gaffs. And I really, yeah, I blame myself, and I blame the tone of things that I uh went with in certain encounters and with certain NPCs. Uh Maybe I also blame Dimension 20 for watching that and trying to emulate that by, subverting expectations with my NPCs one too many times. And none of my NPCs ever really came across as taking the situation seriously, so I guess the players just followed suit. Uh, but I can very much so say that I'm going to actively try to not let that happen for the rest of this campaign. Anyway, as for where we were at, so they uh, yeah, had this whole talk about what they desire to do with these trolls. They killed these, or they killed the goblin slave master, freed the rest of them. They killed the troll guard at the front gate, took his horn outside, blew it, let the whole troll army, the entire mercenary company of the war trolls, came rushing outside to see what was going down. And I really, thinking back on it, like, I guess a lot of my feelings from how I'm, in my hindsight towards this session probably come from my really my weakness and my allowing of that to work in any sense. I guess I started to slightly panic because we were coming close to the end of the session and nothing else had occurred. And I figured, like, well, like, something has got to develop and evolve over the course of this session. Thinking back on it, the entire destruction of the town of Borzu, probably enough of a development that I could have carried that. Uh, I will say, just in general, for the DMing style, like, there certainly has been a change up in that at the very beginning, I had a single page of paper with my TV episode plot of this, that, and the other happens. There's these encounters, there's these NPCs, and there's this reward at the end. And I've since turned my DM notes into this conspiracy theorist, just scattered 20 pages across the desk that I'm constantly shuffling through and reading to see what's going on at any given place at any given time. And I feel like that's there's probably an element of myself of trying to, well, for one, I feel like that's kind of just the natural result of any campaign that goes on for long enough, is that just more and more options begin to open up. And I also, I think there is an element of trying to run the campaign that I would want to play in rather than running the campaign that my players want to play in. So, like, I do think there might just be an element of, like a transitory period where people are more so used to that very structured, like, type of session where they are just going to like I'm gonna give them a hook, and then there's gonna be a setup and a reminder and a callback or a payoff, and there's going to be just encounters, and there's going to be a boss, and then there's going to be a reward. And now sessions are starting off with me having no idea what and where the players are going to go and do, and me just saying like, well, what do you guys want to do? And uh like I can see how if you're not used to that sort of session, then um having to like fall back on what you do know. uh I guess I do hope that that players will learn. And yeah, I also think I might be being a little too hard on myself, because I do think people did generally have fun and enjoy this session, even though it was definitely among the more sloppy of my sessions. I do see in the future, I can at least imagine, or I think the future is going to become more and more sloppy with these sessions as more and more elements are introduced, and more things that just now exist in the world as a result of my players knowing about them that can be played off of. And just in any given moment having to decide how to rule that, and how much of an effect I I should allow that like thing that they want to do to have an effect on like the story. Uh yeah. Uh anyway, they trick these trolls out, lock the door, barricade it. They now have this hold under protection. Uh uh they've got it controlled now. They now have this hold to play off of. What they want to do with that, I guess we'll find out. Like if they don't just want it to be immediately reconquered, they'll certainly have to keep it defended. But I imagine Gilmore isn't going to just want to sit in his hold all day for the rest of his life. So that'll certainly have to be an issue that they try to solve from in some way. And they, get to the treasure vault and collect all these ancestral treasures of the clan of Gilmore. And there was in particular a magic item, a cloak of the dusk mantle, and they gave Gilmore gave that to Adrian. And that's about that for that session. I suppose I like where the campaign is going to go from here. It is unclear. I feel like there's yet to be another real path that they've been set on, because when it came to Lurius, there was a big dungeon that they knew they were going to go through from level to level to level to level, and it seemed like everyone kind of knew what they were going to do and what kind of precautions they needed to take in order to continue. Like the plot, uh now it feels kind of unclear and lost, and people don't know exactly what actions to take in order to continue to hinder the corpse weaver, and what they should do specifically to stop him. And I guess I think I'll give it another go of at least a couple more very open sessions where the players can really just do whatever they want. And uh if it continues to go down this path where like it seems almost random and that players are doing things simply to do them rather than because they feel any like strong drive or motivation to complete that thing. Um, may I think I'll try switching back to the more very structured type of sessions where I've got encounters and a boss and everything in mind just straight from the get go. Um, but yeah, that's it. And we'll see you guys in the next session.